Welcome back. In this second tutorial video on our first exercise, I will cover how to sample colors from a photo, create shapes, duplicate shapes, explain the layers panel, and if you need help getting to the point that is demonstrated on my screen here, please reference tutorial video 1 in the digital art folder. So we have the layers panel in Photoshop, and this is one of the most right over here. If you can't find it for some reason, if yours is gone, you will go to Window and then go down to Layers. If you like shortcuts, you'll hit F7 and that will bring up the Layers panel. So if I hit F7, it'll go away and then come back. So just make sure that this is always in your view. We'll make this a little bit bigger. If you think of a bunch of transparencies, I always try and link digital examples to non-digital examples, and if you think of drawing a really complex drawing on one sheet of transparency with a permanent marker, if you mess up once, permanent marker is permanent, you would have to scrap the whole thing and then start over. But if you had, let's say, 5 or 6 transparencies and drew separate objects or smaller pieces of that drawing that would make up the whole drawing, if you messed up on one area, you could just get rid of that one transparency and the rest of your drawing wouldn't be ruined. And since these transparencies are indeed transparent, if you laid them all on top of each other, it would look like one finished piece. You would just have more of a say over the different components of your piece. That's what the layers panel is like in Photoshop. We want to make sure that we're always putting objects on separate layers. If I did this whole assignment on just this layer 1 right here, I highlighted it so it's active now, and if I messed up on one piece, it would be a lot harder than doing everything on separate pieces and then just being able to drag layers to the trash as I wanted to. So to make a new layer, I come down here and I'll hover over this. It says create new layer. I'm going to click that and then layer 2 comes up. It's nice to get in the habit of organizing your layers because you'll do Photoshop projects really soon that are a lot more complex than this, and sometimes you have like 20 or 30 layers. So I'm just going to double click my layer here and I'm going to name it, or rather it's a painting. So I'm going to say painting if I want to get technical. And here I'm going to make a color swatch. So I'm going to say color swatch 1. You can name it really whatever you want, it's your preference, but just so you know how to name layers. And if I want to make my color swatch, I want to make sure that I've highlighted this layer, not this one right here. If I were to go make it and the painting layer was highlighted, I would make it on the wrong layer. So just make sure the proper layer is highlighted. I'm going to come over here to the left-hand toolbar, my important toolbar, and I noticed that a lot of these tools have triangles in the lower right-hand portion of the symbol. So that means I can left-click and then I have a bunch of other tools that are grouped with these tools that relate to them. So just know that if for some reason I'm looking for my gradient tool that I just hid, well, practice is going to tell me that it's behind the paint bucket tool, so I'm going to click and hold and then switch. So know that there are a lot more tools that are accessible than are right on this interface right here. You just got to left click and hold. So today I want to use my rectangular marquee tool, and I'm just going to draw a swatch like this. And if you refer to that www.designseeds.com, you can see a finished example of what we're working towards. And we want to represent 5 to 6 colors that are in this piece and then put them down here. So I want to make this about a 1/5 or a 1/6 as long as the width of the painting or the photograph that I chose. So now I need to fill this with color, so I'm going to go over to my eyedropper tool and I'm working with a secondary color palette. So I would refer to my notes and know that I would want to represent 5 or 6 versions of green, purple, and orange. So I'm going to choose a light green and a dark green. I'll make 6, 2 for each. And I'm just going to click with this eyedropper tool. And if you look over here, whenever I click with the eyedropper, this front color changes on my left-hand toolbar. So I'm just going to kind of click around until I find a green that I like. I really like that one. It's kind of like lime green. And I'm going to find now my paint bucket tool. So that's right below the eraser. If you see a square ranging from dark to light, that's the gradient tool. Remember, I just click and hold and then select my paint bucket tool, and I'm going to come and I'm going to fill that in. Now what I have to do is get rid of these dancing ants right here, and I do that by hitting Control and holding, and then hitting D for deselect. And if I want to do that not with a keyboard shortcut, I would go select up here and then I would go deselect, and then it shows you the shortcut right there is Control D. So now I want to make color swatches that are exactly this size. So instead of coming over and then trying to recreate the size every time, I can just go over to the layer panels over here, and then I can click and drag and duplicate my layer. And this is useful in so many different projects in Photoshop, so it's really important that you know how to do it. So click and drag this down, and I'm going to drag it and hover it over the same button that I used to create a new layer, and I'm going to let go. And I'm going to rename this. I'm going to name it Color Swatch 2. You could rename these with the color, so I could say like lime green here, dark green with this one, whatever you want to do. And it doesn't really look like anything happened, but if I take my move tool up here and I highlight my layer that I want to work with, so Color Swatch 2, I can click and move, and I notice that Photoshop copied that layer right on top of itself. So I'm going to drag it over, and then I'm going to go and sample a different color. So I want a dark green because I want it to be different. I'm going to click my paint bucket tool, and then I'm going to dye that. So I'm going to repeat this process until I have about 5 or 6 colors, and I'm just going to quickly do that. Oops, that's something for later. Color Swatch 3. Click and move this over, always working on the same layer. I'm trying to get equal spacing right here and right here. Photoshop is pretty good at that. If you're having trouble, you can click Control plus to zoom in a little bit, and then you get a little bit more accuracy. So now I have one of my 3 secondary colors. I want to do orange. So I'm going to find my paint bucket, click copy, move. Don't worry about if this doesn't line up perfectly once you get to the end. I'll show you how to fix that. It's a lighter orange. I'm going to dye that. Copying this here. Now it's on to purple, my favorite color. And I want to move that, dye it, and then I'm going to make one more. Move. And I just stopped renaming my layers over here for the sake of time, for your time, but it is a good idea for you to label them. Alright, so I'm going to zoom out by hitting Control minus just so I can see this whole thing again. And oh my gosh, I realized that this isn't centered and my picture is a little bit too big. So I could either resize my picture by finding the picture layer, the painting layer, hitting Control T, holding down Shift and making that smaller like you learned in the previous video, or I could make my color swatches smaller. And I think I'm going to do that because I see that on this side and this side over here, it makes the picture look really centered. So I just want to do one thing, and that's resizing all of these to keep my picture centered. So I'm going to click the lowest most color swatch in my layer order, and then I'm going to hold down Shift while I click the highest most color swatch in my layer order. And that's going to select all of these at once. So we've grouped together these images by clicking, holding Shift, and then clicking again. So now I'm going to hit Control T, and you'll notice that bounding box comes around all of these. Grouping together layers to transform is again a transferable skill that you will use later. So I'm going to hold down Shift here to just make sure that my proportions are right. And now I've resized this to the size of the picture. I'm going to double click. And that is how I resize images as a group. So you can refer to the next video to complete this project, and then again we're going to talk about how to create gradients and how to create and manipulate type.